This is where it's hard to relay when there's so much because we don't get them.
They tried to erase her. The WNBA's brightest new star, the rookie who filled arenas, smashed ratings, and dragged a whole new generation into women's basketball.
Season and having an excellent passing season as well. Her assist numbers
Suddenly vanished from the lineup with zero explanation, no press release, no injury report, no answers, just dead silence, like she never existed. But two players weren't having it. Sophie Cunningham fired the first warning, saying you don't sideline your biggest star unless you're scared of her power. Then Lexie Hull followed right behind her. If this can happen to Caitlin Clark, what will they do to the rest of us? That line hit hard. Within hours, microphones were live. Within days, the clips exploded online. And within weeks, the league's carefully guarded image cracked wide open.
Who has captivated the entire globe. Sells out arenas everywhere she goes.
What happens when powerful institutions fear influence they can't control and the athletes refuse to disappear quietly? This wasn't just a benching. This was an attempted erasure. It started with whispers that something was off. Reporters at practice noticed Caitlin Clark wasn't warming up with the starters. Her name wasn't even on the rotation board. That alone sent shockwaves through the building. Coaches brushed off questions with vague, empty answers, and that only poured gasoline on the fire. Suspicion spread fast. Social media lit up instantly. Load management was floated. Some insiders hinted at discipline. Others threw out half-baked excuses, but every theory collapsed under basic facts.
So much to this program, and they have to sit the rest of to finish their career on the bench.
Clark hadn't broken rules. She hadn't skipped practice. She hadn't violated team policy. Nothing added up. Her performance numbers told a completely different story. She was leading her team in every category that actually matters. Points, assists, impact. On top of that, she was pulling more media attention than the rest of the league combined. So why would any organization remove the one player driving historic growth? Then the leak started. Sources close to the league began quietly talking about tension between Clark and high-ranking officials. Her blunt post-game interviews reportedly rubbed people in power the wrong way. Her social media reach became a problem executives couldn't manage or filter. She wasn't just a player anymore.
Going toe-to-toe with the biggest women's basketball stars on the biggest stage.
She had become a movement, a voice, a brand, someone with opinions about how women's basketball should look, sound, and feel to real fans. And according to one particularly explosive rumor, Clark challenged league marketing decisions behind closed doors. She reportedly called them tone-deaf and out of touch with real fans. Less than 48 hours later, her minutes dropped. Within 72 hours, she was glued to the bench. And then, she was gone. No press conference, no media access, no team statement. Just cold, calculated silence, like they were trying to choke her momentum before it turned into something unstoppable.
Because I think we are exhausted, you know, when it's blow after blow, a whole bunch of other things going on.
The league clearly thought this would blow over. They were dead wrong. Fans didn't just notice, they organized. Hashtags flooded timelines asking, "Where is Caitlin?" Thousands demanded answers. Comment sections turned into digital protests, ripping apart every league decision. Even NBA players spoke up, calling the situation shady and disrespectful to the game itself. And every hour of silence from league officials only made things worse. Each unanswered question felt like proof something ugly was happening behind closed doors.
We obviously are playing with nothing to lose. We're playing with a lot of joy, a lot of love for each other, and I think
this wasn't just about silence anymore. This was about silencing. And that difference pushed Sophie Cunningham past the point of staying quiet. Sophie didn't wait for permission. While reporters chased rumors and fans flooded inboxes with outrage, she walked straight to the post-game mic. She skipped the scripted talk, ignored the corporate filter, and dropped a sentence that spread faster than anything the league's PR team could stop. You do not sideline your biggest star unless you are scared of her power. That one line detonated across the internet.
I would have said something to her. I would have clapped back at her. That's who I am.
Clips went viral in minutes. Sports media couldn't dodge the issue anymore. Commentators who had been tiptoeing suddenly had no choice but to ask the hard questions. Everyone was already thinking it, but Sophie wasn't done talking. She didn't stop at one interview. On her podcast, she went even deeper, laying out what she believed was really happening inside team meetings. She reportedly challenged leadership directly, live on air, saying the quiet part out loud when most athletes were still biting their tongues. Sophie made it clear. Caitlin Clark wasn't benched for basketball reasons. She said Clark was sidelined because her influence scared people who prefer stars they can manage instead of voices they can't control. Sophie accused the league of playing political games with player careers and blasted executives for choosing control over real progress. She called out a culture that punishes excellence the moment it comes with opinions, and everyone knew the risk she was taking. Speaking like this directly against league power could wreck a career fast. Endorsements could disappear, minutes could shrink, doors could quietly close. The whisper networks that decide who gets opportunities and who gets iced out could have turned on her overnight. Sophie knew all that, and she still spoke. She reportedly decided the truth mattered more than her own protection. Fans reacted instantly. Hashtags didn't just trend, they multiplied. Stand with Sophie and Free Clark surged side by side across platforms. What started as frustration turned into a movement almost overnight. Her courage lit a fuse the league never saw coming, and the flames started spreading in ways nobody could control. But Sophie wasn't alone for long, because the very next day, another player stepped forward ready to stand beside her. Lexie Hull didn't ease into it. She didn't release a carefully polished statement or hide behind approved talking points. She walked straight into the press room after practice, stood in front of the cameras, and spoke from the chest. If Caitlin Clark can be treated like this, what do you think they will do to the rest of us? No corporate spin. No polite wording, just raw truth aimed straight at what every player in the league had been thinking privately. That single sentence hit like an earthquake. The clip exploded instantly, jumping far beyond WNBA circles and into mainstream sports coverage. ESPN panels, podcasts, and independent creators were suddenly all asking the same thing. What is really happening behind closed doors at the WNBA? Lexie followed that moment with a social media post that sent shockwaves through the fan base. A black and white photo of herself standing beside Caitlin, captioned with just one word, loyalty. Was she calling out betrayal inside the locker room? Was the message aimed at management, teammates who stayed silent, or the entire culture of fear? Nobody could say for sure, but the timing made the meaning impossible to ignore. Sources soon claimed Lexie became one of the most outspoken voices in team meetings after the controversy broke. One leaked account said she directly challenged the staff, asking why the only player selling out arenas was suddenly glued to the bench while everyone acted like nothing was wrong. Then came the post that vanished. Lexie reportedly tweeted, "If you want to build a legacy, stop silencing the ones who created it," and deleted it shortly after. Fans grabbed screenshots fast. The message spread across Reddit, TikTok, and fan pages within hours. Some believed it was aimed straight at league executives. Others thought it was a shot at media figures downplaying the issue. But one thing was clear, Lexie wasn't reacting by accident. She was choosing a side. Reports started circulating that she was helping spark conversations among younger players across multiple teams. Athletes tired of old politics, players scared of losing everything if they spoke honestly, people who wanted change but needed someone brave enough to move first. Sophie and Lexie had become that spark together, and the league was now staring down something it wasn't built to handle. The league never saw this coming, a full-blown rebellion led by its own players and powered by the fans. The second Sophie and Lexie spoke out, supporters stopped acting like passive viewers and turned into activists overnight. Social media didn't just react, it detonated across every platform at once. Twitter threads started stacking evidence of suspicious treatment. Instagram comment sections flooded official WNBA posts demanding accountability. Reddit users organized deep dive investigations, lining up inconsistencies in league explanations. TikTok creators dropped viral breakdowns frame by frame, tearing apart every moment of the controversy. Hashtags multiplied by the hour. Justice for Clark. Free Caitlin. Stop silencing stars. Each one climbing higher. As the movement grew, fans didn't just talk, they documented everything. Timelines showed exactly when Clark's minutes began shrinking. Clips surfaced of rough physical play against her that referees ignored. Side-by-side comparisons revealed how other players received totally different treatment for the same situations. Freeze frames captured obvious fouls that went uncalled. Stat breakdowns proved her performance demanded more playing time, not less. Some fans even tracked official WNBA social accounts and noticed a clear drop in Caitlin Clark-related posts around the time of her benching. The picture was ugly. The evidence pointed toward coordination, an organized effort to shrink her visibility before the public fully caught on. Then the pressure hit where it really hurts. Sponsors. Leaked reports claimed at least 2 brand partners privately reached out demanding answers before continuing promotional deals. Translated clearly, it meant, fix this now or the money disappears. Clark jersey sales reportedly dropped hard. Ticket returns spiked for games she wasn't expected to play. Arenas that had been selling out for the first time in years suddenly saw demand collapse. The financial fallout of pushing fans away arrived faster than the front office expected. Cities that had finally felt real mainstream attention watched it drain away in real time. And that fan uprising did what critics alone never could. It forced the story out of sports-only coverage. Mainstream media jumped in. Cultural commentators weighed what this meant for women's sports as a whole. The conversation expanded beyond basketball into bigger questions about how institutions treat the people who actually generate their success. Through all of it, the league stayed quiet. The silence stretched on as if they believed the storm would burn itself out. That gamble failed badly. After nearly 2 days of nonstop pressure, the WNBA finally released an official statement, and somehow it made things worse. The statement didn't name Caitlin Clark. It didn't address claims of silencing players. It didn't answer the questions fans and reporters had been asking nonstop. Instead, it labeled everything a strategic rotational decision and told everyone to trust the process. The backlash was instant and savage. Fans read straight through the corporate wording. Reporters called it evasive. Players didn't even pretend it was convincing. The statement confirmed what people already believed. This was damage control, a calculated attempt to shrink a controversy that had already exploded beyond PR repair. The playbook was obvious. Vague language, zero accountability, no substance. That approach might have worked years ago, but not now. In the social media era, nothing disappears, and this response collapsed immediately. Sophie Cunningham reacted with a single eye-roll emoji on Twitter. No caption, no explanation. Within minutes, it pulled tens of thousands of likes. The message was loud and clear. We see exactly what you're doing. Lexie Hull followed up by reposting a clip of the statement being read on air, adding her own caption. So we are pretending this is normal now. The sarcasm cut straight through the corporate deflection. Fans boosted both reactions until they completely drowned out the original statement. The league tried to regain control of the narrative, but the players and fans had already taken it back. Even veteran analysts who usually stay neutral couldn't keep quiet anymore. The tone shifted fast. One former WNBA player tweeted that rotational decisions don't erase your MVP-level player without a reason, adding that something about this situation stinks, and a lot of people agreed. The numbers backed it up. Engagement on official league content fell off a cliff. At the same time, posts criticizing league leadership exploded. The WNBA had lost control of its own story, and every attempt to fix it only exposed how out of touch leadership really was. But while the public fight played out online, something deeper was happening behind closed doors. Inside locker rooms across the league, the real damage was spreading. Teams began splitting along lines that had nothing to do with basketball. Veterans who had spent years surviving league politics suddenly found themselves clashing with younger players who refused to accept the old rules. Silence versus rebellion. Loyalty to institutions versus loyalty to the truth. According to sources close to multiple teams, the atmosphere turned toxic fast. Players who once laughed together before games were now whispering in corners. Eye contact felt loaded. Trust crumbled as everyone tried to figure out who supported the status quo and who was ready to push back. This stopped being about one benching. It became about the entire culture of how athletes were treated. Then the stories started coming out. Former players who had left the league years ago began sharing their own experiences. Accounts of being silenced, overlooked, punished for speaking honestly. Each story added weight to what Sophie and Lexie had already exposed. This wasn't a one-time issue. This was how things had been operating for years. The only difference now was that someone finally said it out loud. Reports surfaced that players from several teams were communicating privately. Conversations happening off the record, away from official channels. Under growing pressure to stay quiet, a coalition was forming. Athletes who felt failed by leadership. Players who believed the only way forward was forcing accountability from people who had never faced consequences before. The league wasn't dealing with two outspoken players anymore. It was facing the reality that its entire workforce might stop accepting conditions they'd tolerated for far too long. Then came the moment no one saw coming. Just when the controversy seemed stuck in an uneasy stalemate, Sophie Cunningham and Lexie Hull returned together. Not with tweets, not with cryptic posts, but with a joint interview broadcast live across major sports networks. They broke every unwritten rule. No prepared statements, no careful phrasing, no corporate-approved language meant to protect relationships. They sat side by side, stared straight into the cameras, and delivered a warning that couldn't be softened or spun. The era of silence was over. Sophie spoke first. Her voice was calm, but the words hit like a hammer. If this is how you treat the player who built your league, no one is safe. The room went completely still. Reporters froze mid-note. Pens hovered above notebooks. Nobody rushed to speak because the message landed too heavy to ignore. This wasn't about defending one teammate anymore. This was about exposing a system capable of targeting anyone who became inconvenient. anyone who gained too much influence, anyone whose voice threatened the control executives believed they deserved. Sophie wasn't criticizing a decision. She was calling out a culture. Lexie followed instantly, never breaking eye contact with the camera. "We've been told to stay quiet for too long. Not anymore." That was it. A clear line in the sand. The declaration rippled through every locker room in the league. Players watching from home knew exactly what they were seeing. Two athletes with everything to lose deciding that truth mattered more than comfort. Solidarity over safety, accountability over silence. And from that moment on, nothing inside the league felt the same. They understood something very clearly. Speaking honestly comes with consequences, but staying silent while injustice plays out in plain sight makes you complicit, and that was something they refused to live with anymore. Clips from the interview moved faster than anything Sophie or Lexie had ever said before. Within hours, the footage racked up millions of views across every platform. The reach was unstoppable. Commentators who normally tiptoe around controversy called it the most honest moment in WNBA history. The authenticity couldn't be questioned. These weren't athletes reading from scripts or playing roles. These were players who had hit their breaking point and decided the world needed to see exactly how they felt. NBA players jumped in almost immediately, retweeting clips with fire emojis and clear support that amplified the message even further. Even rival WNBA stars who had stayed quiet before started liking and reposting the video. Some added simple captions like "finally" or "say it louder," and those small words carried massive weight. What began as one controversy suddenly felt like a collective awakening. In the days that followed, the movement leveled up fast. Fans didn't just react. They organized. Coordinated campaigns targeted sponsors directly, urging them to publicly choose sides, stand with the players demanding accountability, or risk losing the audience those players brought in. Independent outlets built by former athletes stepped in next. They began publishing deep investigations into league politics, quiet punishments, and careers that mysteriously stalled for reasons never explained in official records. Stories long buried started resurfacing. The spotlight that once focused on a single benching now exposed every executive decision the league hoped would stay hidden. Everything was dragged into public view, whether leadership wanted it there or not. Sophie and Lexie were no longer just outspoken teammates. They had become something far more dangerous to the old power structure. They were symbols of resistance, living proof that players could challenge institutional authority and survive the fallout. Their willingness to take personal risks gave others permission to speak. The coalition that had been forming quietly behind closed doors suddenly had leaders willing to take the first hit publicly, and that forced the league into a position it never planned to face. Acknowledge the culture Sophie and Lexie described and commit to real change, or double down on silence and watch control slip away as more players decided they had nothing left to lose by telling the truth. The warning had been delivered. Players were done asking for permission to be treated fairly, done accepting conditions past generations tolerated out of fear, done pretending silence protected anything worth saving. If the league wouldn't defend its athletes, then the athletes would defend each other. And the women leading that defense made one thing crystal clear. They were no longer afraid of consequences. The league believed silence could bury the truth, that removing a star would go unnoticed, that control would always overpower outrage. They were wrong. The voices of Sophie Cunningham and Lexie Hull ignited a reckoning that cannot be erased. A spark spreading through locker rooms, boardrooms, and broadcast studios alike. Fans are watching, sponsors are watching, and the players who built this game are watching too. Now the question isn't whether change is coming. It's whether the league will adapt before it loses the very stars who made it impossible to ignore.